So good day, everyone, to whoever is watching this video or presentation. So today we are going to be conducting a question and answer to the question provided regarding with our concept paper that we conduct earlier this week, which is entitled "A Study to Assess the Pros and Cons of a Vaccine and the Importance of it to Our World." But before we go to the question and answer part of this video, let us first give you the brief summary of the content of our concept paper, which is that's actually answered before. So let's start with the background of the study, which is going to be explained by Mr. Cesar Mazaredo.
Thank you, Mr. Caballo. Background of the study. Vaccines have always been helpful throughout many generations, and even long before vaccines were already created to enforce and nearly create a remedy for a certain type of disease in order to control the virus spread against humanity, according to a research of Timeline Organization of 2015. That is why we think of the question of why does vaccines take several months, years, or even generations before it is implemented or tested throughout the population? Well, research shows that vaccines are well studied due to it. As said, vaccines can be very deadly in treating certain diseases and viruses and would just terminate the host body itself if it is not well studied. Well, it is a major fact that producing a medicine for cure requires more time and complexity compared to producing vaccines. We have a saying that prevention is better than cure. That's why vaccination is always at the top options, considering that it had contributed a lot in the society. But despite the good background check, taking vaccines are sometimes not 100% effective, for it can produce side effects that can lead to life-threatening conditions in the human body. That's why the team decided to research the advantages and disadvantages of vaccines in order to assess what we are dealing with and what needs to be done for the future vaccines.
Thank you so much for that part, Mr. Cesar Mazaredo. So now let us go to the preliminary literature review, which I'm going to discuss. So for our preliminary literature review, we divided it to three subtopics so that we can further explain the main idea of our concept paper. So first is we are going to define what is vaccine. So according to Science Friday, the word vaccine and vaccination actually comes from the name for a pox virus or the cowpox virus vaccinia. The Oxford English Dictionary credits the French for giving the term vaccine in 1800 and vaccination in 1803. To the British Medical Journal, the term was used as an adjective in 1799 by British general practitioner Dr. Edward Jenner, and it was a noun vaccination introduced by his friend Richard Dunning in 1800. So, for the history of vaccine, the concept of a vaccine goes way back to 1796 when it was in the middle of an outbreak of smallpox, and the country doctor living in Berkeley named Dr. Edward Jenner performed the first vaccination. He was able to vaccinate an 8-year-old boy from the idea of infecting the boy with cowpox, a weaker kind of smallpox from cows. 6 weeks later, although the kid had the symptom of cowpox, but he was free from the more dangerous smallpox, according to Stern and Merkel 2005. So the contribution of vaccines throughout the years. Vaccines have contributed enormously and continue to save millions of lives around the world. According to Brian Greenberg from this article, vaccine was able to contribute in the past years with the battle of two major infections, smallpox and rinderpest. Not only that, but also many illnesses were able to be eradicated, just for example, the polio. Evidently, it saved many lives in the past. Its power was proven even in the past. In the present and for the future, vaccine became the hope for battle in the current pandemic that was caused by COVID-19 that we are actually facing right now. It is evidently believed that pre-pandemic normalcy will never return until a safe and effective vaccine strategy becomes available and a global vaccination program is implemented successfully, according to Mangla Kumari J. and Sam A. Matthew and S. M. Brian B. L. It is also the hope for future pandemic or virus outbreak. So now let us go to the statement of the problem of our conch paper, which is going to be explained also by Mr. Chester Mazareto.
Thank you, Mr. Caballo. The statement of the problem and or objectives. The purpose of these questions is to help us assess what we can know in the research on our further discussion. Number one, what are the advantages and disadvantages of getting a vaccine? Number two, how important is the vaccine to us humankind? And number three, how effective are vaccines in boosting our immunity against bacteria and viruses? These questions will serve as our guidelines in order to conclude the whole synopsis of our research made by the team.
So next for our methodology, which is going to be explained by Mr. Don Juan Larenday.
So thank you, Mr. Caballo. So methodology. So the methodology, first, research design. The research design that the researchers have chosen for this conduct the study is the form of experimental research design. In this way, the researchers will be able to determine the relationship of the cause and effect of their chosen topic or throughout the or study through an observation. Research approach. So the research approach to be used in this research study that was chosen by the researchers is the form of qualitative research. In this way, the researchers would determine and to understand and exploring the meanings through individual research samples and groups to describe the certain topic in order to ask certain questions and to reach a specific answer to support the research. Sampling method. So the sampling method of the research study was also chosen by the researchers in the form of systematic sampling. Due to a setback in the limitations of the research, due to the ongoing pandemic in the country, the researchers will only limit only chosen individuals to gather the data for the research from the sampling. This will be also convenient to the researchers because it will be easy to administer the samples. So data collection or methods. The data collection or gathering methods that will be used in the study would be the form of interviews, questionnaires, surveys, and through observation. In this chosen data gathering or collection method by the researchers, it will help them to gather enough information to support the study in each individual by the use of questionnaires, surveys, and individual interviews, and will be observing the cause and effect of the study. So, data analysis. The data analysis method for this research study was the form of narrative data analysis and discourse data analysis. Due to the research study would be form of the qualitative research approach. In these methods, the researchers would process the gathered data through various sources such as individuals, interviews, surveys, and questionnaires. And lastly, would be a narrative interpretation to discourse its analysis with the use of social context by the communication between the researcher and the respondents or the samples.
Thank you for that amazing comment, explanation of our methodology. So now let's go back. Let's go straight to our question and answer that were provided by our professor. So the first question is, what is the main purpose and what is the motivation in doing the paper? So what is the main purpose? We all know that we are facing the pandemic right now, and vaccines are very important for us to have or to bring back the normal life that we used to have before this pandemic occurred. And another that is so that we can know the pros and cons of getting a vaccines, and also we are going to know the importance of vaccines in one side because we all know that there are some people out there that are still neglectful of the fact of the vaccines because it is kind of a medical thing, and they say that it can may damage their life, but in all facts, these vaccines are conducted in a very discreet kind of kind of experiments, and has to be has to be approved by those who are professional. So next is, what is your motivation in doing the research?
As Mr. Caballo stated, as we develop our whole synopsis, The COVID-19 virus continues to spread all over the country and became a threat to humankind. We were required to wear safety equipment to follow health protocols, and many establishments have stopped working temporarily while they find alternative ways to adapt at the pandemic. And since vaccines are a hot topic today for COVID-19, the team was motivated to do this research in order to evaluate the pros and cons of vaccination and to further improve the developing of future vaccines. What are your salient points? Our salient points are that vaccines contain harmful elements that can cause life-threatening conditions despite its purpose. The goal of a vaccine is to help the immune system of a human body conquer the microorganisms that have caused the virus. And although there is a very high rate that the vaccination would be a success, we cannot neglect that it is still a gamble, considering that the vaccine still has a rate that can cause fatality despite its low percentage.
So, how did you gather these details? The researchers and our team gathered these details through a variety of sources. According to one sources, the most recent one is the ongoing process of the so-called future normal that will happen by the end term of 2021. So vaccines aren't easily to produce and to research. Typically, vaccines are researched and studied around 2 to 3 years or more than, depending on the vaccine. So, for the vaccine of COVID-19, there are numerous rumors of the vaccine about creating in Russia, Western Europe, and other countries that they have the so-called vaccine. So we are not sure about some certain vaccines, but it is very well said that um, it is much better to extend the research of a certain vaccine rather to give it earlier than the public due to much higher risk of failing of the vaccines.
So the next question is, how will your study contribute to society? As what we have said earlier, we are facing pandemic right now, and it is very evidently evidently shown that the only way to for us to go back to normal is a vaccine. So how will your study contribute to society? It will very evidently contribute to our society because the readers will have to have will going to have the knowledge about the pros and cons of the vaccines, and also they will learn the importance of getting a vaccine because without vaccine you cannot have the immunity with the certain viruses that are very deadly and fatal for us human race. So it will going to contribute a lot to our society, and if this research will um we're going to further study for like to gather data that are very medically statistically proven. It will going to be evidently contribute to society because of that. So the next question is,
So the next question would be, what are the limitations in your study and how did you address it? So our first limitation and the most obvious one was how we would administer individual samplings if through internet if due to the ongoing pandemic. So we are still in the protocol of not having social contact with other people and conducting face to face or in um, individual interviews. So what we did is we addressed it by doing internet calls through Zoom meetings and Google Meets. So these are one solution of how we address the individual interviews. The next is the surveys. So the surveys will be given as through the internet or through Google Forms. Instead of having a hard copy of the survey as to face, we would just administer the surveys by using the soft copy forms. There you would be at ease of answering the forms and the surveys. Even the questionnaire is also given to the certain individual or a chosen group by through the soft copy. So there they will be answering the surveys, the questionnaires, and the evaluation forms.
So the last question is, what recommendations are needed to resolve the issue you have presented? Um, if you look into, if you further look with our concept paper really focuses on the articles that are provided already with from the this guaranteed resources. We would like to recommend for future researchers that they included a more precise critical analysis, or like they should ask more professionals that are related with these vaccinations and stuff, or medical fields, so that they can also further explain or propound the idea or the main objectives of our concept paper. Is there any addition to that, Mr. Larunday?
So in addition to what Mr. Tyrone Caballo has said, so my only recommendation in a vaccine is to further study each vaccines. So one concrete example that I could give is the case of the dengue vaccine. Due to the dengue vaccine being as a free vaccine in the Ninoy Aquino administration, there wasn't a certain study about the vaccine, though it was just administered to the public for free. There are so-called rumors that the dengue vaccine was a bad vaccine or can be deadly cause for those who had shots with the vaccine and got treated by the vaccine. Some say that the dengue vaccine was a treatment, 100% treatment for certain cases of dengue and such. So for me, um, vaccines should be much more administered and researched well thoroughly by not just only trusting what other people say, but we must research on facts and if this certain vaccine could really treat this type of virus or diseases. So for the COVID-19 vaccine, still we are still looking forward. Almost all of us are still looking forward to the so-called back to normal future. According to Pfizer, in this November 19 article, the authorization of the so-called COVID-19 vaccine is not yet much administered. Rather, that it will be 2 to 3 years from the facts of being administered. But it is still being rushed by Pfizer as to publicly administering it. Though they are as of this December November 30, they are going through vaccine trials. So we are still looking forward for this issue. So we are not yet certain. Even though the Pfizer had said they are not certain if this will be administered or to be sure that it will 100% cure the so-called pandemic of COVID-19. That's all in my opinion.
Another recommendation that I can and that we can recommend is that for future researchers that we are going to have the same topic as we have, is that maybe you could focus we could also focus to those risks that are needed to be done to have a vaccine. For example, the animal cruelty that has to be done, so that these vaccines are going to be tested before it will be tested with human trials. But there are a lot of things that has to be done so that we can have vaccines. And I hope the future researchers are going to have this like a little bit information, so that the reader are going to be interested that for the disadvantages of these vaccines and stuff. Um, that would be all. Are there any more addition to the topics that we have, Mr. Lunday or Mr. Mazaredo? Final thoughts.
Hello, mic check. I strongly believe in the statements of Mr. Caballo and Mr. Lagunday, so I have nothing more to add. Thank you.
So that is all for me,
Okay.
Mr. Kabayo.
Yeah. So I guess that will be the conclusion of our the video for today. I hope for those who watches this that they get an idea of what our concept paper co- con- what our concept paper mainly objective is, and I hope you learned something about our presentation for today, and that would be all. Thank you.